Think about what happens the exact second you get a physical cut. Or maybe you just stub your toe or burn your hand on a stove.
Well, your body definitely doesn't pause to analyze the situation.
Right. It just launches into pure, unadulterated panic. Your heart rate spikes, cortisol and adrenaline just flood your system.
It's a total all-hands-on-deck emergency response.
Exactly. And it's designed for one thing only, which is keeping you alive for the next 5 minutes.
Which, I mean, that's an evolutionary miracle when you are actually running from a tiger.
Yeah, totally.
Because your system literally shuts down all long-term projects. So digestion, deep cellular repair, building your immune system, it redirects every single ounce of energy toward immediate survival. You seal the breach, you neutralize the threat.
The problem is you cannot live your entire life in that state.
No, definitely not.
Because if your nervous system stayed in that adrenaline-soaked panic mode forever, the biological stress would literally liquefy your organs.
Wow, yeah, it's brutal.
It is, because true, long-term healing requires the exact opposite of panic. It requires you to be still, to rest, and to just let your cells do the painfully slow work of rebuilding.
But look at how we operate in the modern world, you know?
We treat our overflowing inboxes and our missed deadlines and just daily inconveniences as tiger attacks.
We really do.
Welcome to today's deep dive. It is Friday, May 15th, 2026. And today we are taking a massive step back from that constant panicked rushing.
Which I think we all need right now.
For sure, whether you are dealing with a severe case of information overload or you're just feeling perpetually behind in your own life, consider this deep dive your shortcut to understanding a radical alternative.
A very radical alternative.
We are exploring the profound and honestly often uncomfortable difference between reactive speed and sustainable stability.
And we have an incredibly unique pairing of sources to help us map this out today.
Right.
We are pulling from Tarot by Heightened Sea, which provides a daily astrological forecast.
Right.
And a companion sci-fi StoryScope titled The Orchard of Dust.
It's such a cool pairing.
It is a brilliant approach. We get to take these massive, abstract, cosmic concepts and examine them through a very grounded, visceral narrative.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core of today's material blends the cosmic weather of the moment, specifically a new moon in Taurus.
Right, the Taurus energy.
Exactly. It blends that with this vivid story about a planet called Astorvale. And on Astorvale, the soil itself is considered sacred law.
The literal dirt.
The dirt. And haste, so just the simple act of rushing or cutting corners for a quick fix, is legally and culturally considered a form of violence.
What's fascinating here is how the mechanics of the astrology directly architect the world building of the story.
Yeah, how so?
Well, let's look at the new moon in Taurus. In astrology, Taurus is earth energy. It is dense, it is slow, and it is fundamentally about a return to the essence.
Right, it's very grounded.
Exactly. A new moon in this sign is an invitation to look at the ground beneath your feet and focus entirely on what truly nourishes you.
It asks you to stop prioritizing short-term emotional gratification, right?
Yes, and instead commit to unhurried, deliberate, long-term security.
Which brings us to the main character of the sci-fi story, Leora Vey, who is the steward of Astorvale.
She is just the perfect embodiment of this Taurus energy.
Completely. When she makes decisions, she isn't sitting in a boardroom looking at predictive algorithms or, like, quarterly yield spreadsheets.
No, not at all.
The source describes her walking barefoot across these agricultural terraces before dawn. She literally kneels down, presses her hands into the dark earth, and feels whether it is damp and alive.
Yeah, her grandmother taught her this philosophy. It was feel the soil before you decide for it.
I love that line. Leora forces sensation to outrun thought.
And that physical grounding is her ultimate defense mechanism against the antagonist of the story, which is a massive interplanetary entity called the Imperium, or the Consortium.
Right, the bad guys.
Essentially, yeah. The Imperium is a galactic empire that operates purely on extraction. For decades, they just consumed without patience.
They extracted life from their worlds far faster than those ecosystems could replenish themselves.
Exactly. The text specifically says that to them, yield had become God.
You know, I couldn't help but view the Imperium as the ultimate metaphor for modern hustle culture, or what you might call burnout economics.
Oh, that is a perfect term for it.
We see this all the time, right?
Yeah.
We prioritize the immediate yield, getting the project done, hitting the metric, pleasing the client right now.
And we completely ignore the ecological collapse happening inside our own bodies and minds.
Exactly. We take out a biological loan against our own health to finish a sprint, And then we just roll that loan right into the next sprint.
It's totally unsustainable.
And what happens to the Imperium? They are now facing toxic rivers, sterile soil, and just mass starvation across their worlds.
They engineered their own collapse through impatience.
Right.
And that sets up the central conflict of the narrative. The consortium reaches out to Astorvale, which is basically this oasis of life, and demands to buy their massive seed reserves.
Because they want to save their starving worlds.
Right. They offer unimaginable fortunes, trade rights, military protection. They just want a quick fix.
And this is where I really have to push back on Leora's philosophy.
Also.
Because as I was reading this, I kept thinking, you know, if the Imperium citizens are literally starving to death, isn't Leora being incredibly selfish by hoarding these seeds?
That makes sense.
I mean, I understand that rushing is bad, but in a genuine crisis, when lives are on the line, isn't speed absolutely necessary?
Well, it's the most natural objection in the world. And Leora's own communications keeper actually challenges her with that exact argument in the text.
Right, because it just seems cruel to say no.
But Leora's response zeroes in on the practical reality of the Taurus energy. She tells her council, we cannot sell what has not rooted.
Okay.
She points out that starving worlds cannot be saved through panic. Stability is not grown in fear.
I mean, that sounds like a beautiful philosophical excuse to let people starve, honestly. Does the story justify this practically, or are we just supposed to accept that slow is always morally superior?
It justifies it fundamentally through the literal mechanics of the soil.
Okay, walk me through that.
Leora isn't being a fundamentalist here. She's being a stark realist. Think about it. The Imperium's soil is toxic and sterile.
Right.
So if Leora gives in to the panic, packs up millions of seeds, and ships them off at light speed, what actually happens?
They plant them in dead dirt.
Exactly. The Imperium plants them in dead, poisoned earth. The seeds die. The quick fix fails.
Oh, wow.
And now, not only has the Imperium starved anyway, but Astorvale has depleted its own reserves for absolutely nothing.
So the Imperium thinks they can buy their way out of a collapse that they caused through impatience, using that exact same rushed mentality.
Yes.
Ah, I see. You cannot panic your way into stability.
No, you can't.
Throwing healthy energy at a toxic environment doesn't heal the environment, it just drains your energy.
Precisely. Which, is an incredibly confronting lesson for anyone who's ever tried to fix a toxic workplace or a dysfunctional relationship by just working harder and faster.
Right? It just depletes your own seed reserves. But, burying your head in the sand or the soil, in this case, doesn't stop an earthquake.
That is very true.
You can't just plant a polite little garden and ignore the rot underneath. And this is where both the sci-fi story and the astrology take a sudden, deeply chaotic turn.
Yeah, they really do. The astrological forecast notes that this new moon is conjunct with several other planetary bodies.
Right, and just as a reminder, a conjunction in astrology simply means that two or more celestial bodies are occupying the exact same space in the sky from our perspective.
Right, so their energies blend together. It's like two different instruments forced to play the same sheet music simultaneously.
Okay, so what are we dealing with here?
First, the moon is conjunct Mercury in Ceres, which governs news, communication, and agriculture.
Which perfectly mirrors the consortium's desperate plea for food.
Exactly. But far more intensely, it is conjunct Uranus and Sedna.
And Uranus and Sedna do not care about your peaceful morning gardening.
Not even a little bit.
The source breaks this down. Uranus is the planet of sudden awakenings, lightning bolt changes, and unexpected events.
And Sedna.
Well, Sedna is named after the Inuit goddess of the sea who was thrown overboard by her own father. It represents the deepest, coldest depths of our subconscious.
Wow.
Yeah, the betrayals and traumas we have basically buried under miles of ice. When Uranus and Sedna align, which the source notes is building toward an exact peak on May 24th, it is about the violent breaking of old stories.
It is a forced excavation.
Exactly.
And the inciting incident in the Orchard of Dust maps to this astrological transit flawlessly.
Tell me about the incident.
So, Astorvale is a planet where the people believe they know every single inch of their soil. But suddenly, this strange signal emerges.
Like from space.
No, that's the thing. It's not coming from an invading fleet in orbit. It's coming from deep underground, beneath their own agricultural terraces.
Unsettling.
Very. They excavate and they discover this ancient corridor untouched by time. It simply shouldn't exist.
And Leora descends into this chamber, right? The visual description in the source is wild.
Oh, it is so vivid.
The walls are lined with petrified roots, thicker than defensive towers. And sitting in the center of it all is a sleeping organic machine.
And what happens when she wakes it up?
When her presence wakes up, it doesn't just speak to her with a recorded message. It communicates in this raw, downloaded meaning. And the first thing it tells her is chilling. It says, "You have forgotten how to listen."
That gave me goosebumps. The machine forces her to witness the suppressed memories of past civilizations on Astrovail.
Right.
But the crucial detail, the real sudden revelation here, is why those civilizations fell.
It wasn't war, was it?
No. It shows worlds stripped bare and oceans evaporated, not because of apocalyptic wars, but because of impatience.
Oh.
It shows entire societies collapsing because of the decision to sacrifice tomorrow for relief today. 1,000 small compromises, temporary indulgences just to relieve momentary anxieties.
Yep. That is a brutal mirror to look into, and the astrology source gives us another layer to understand Leora's reaction to this.
The Mars and Chiron transit.
Yes.
Yeah.
It mentions a Mars conjunct Chiron transit happening simultaneously. Mars is aggressive, forward momentum.
Right.
And Chiron is known as the wounded healer. It represents our deepest insecurities, our primal wounds.
So when Mars hits Chiron,
it acts like a battering ram against our self-confidence. The source notes this energy triggers deep fears, making us feel challenged, powerless, or entirely unsure of ourselves.
and we see that psychological hit land squarely on Leora.
We really do.
When she watches these visions of collapse caused by practical, everyday betrayals, she doesn't feel righteous anger at the Imperium.
No, she feels a profound, ancient shame within herself.
Because before descending into the chamber, she had secretly been considering compromising.
That's right. She was thinking maybe we could sell just a little grain.
Yeah, she thought maybe we could accelerate production just a fraction to get the Imperium off our backs.
The Mars-Chiron transit completely exposes her hypocrisy. She feels this overwhelming exhaustion of having to carry the responsibility of stewardship, while the entire universe screams at her for quick fixes.
She actually has a moment where she contemplates just giving up.
And think about how often you do this in your own life.
Yeah.
You take on a project you know will burn you out, or you agree to an unreasonable deadline, not because it's the right thing to do.
Right, but because the panic of setting a boundary feels worse than the exhaustion of just saying yes.
Exactly. Leora just wants to hand over the seeds so she doesn't have to carry the burden of saying no anymore.
The temptation to surrender to the panic is incredibly seductive because it offers immediate relief.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because this ancient underground chamber doesn't just play a polite historical documentary for her. The chamber is a psychological weapon, and it induces a mass breakdown.
This aligns perfectly with the final and undoubtedly most intense astrological component of the reading, the new moon's conjunction with the fixed star Algol.
Algol is intense.
Extremely. In astrological lore, Algol is associated with the severed head of Medusa. It is a deeply transformational, deeply uncomfortable energy.
What happens when it's activated?
When Algol is activated, suppressed emotions, rage, and grief violently rise to the surface. People encounter their inner demons.
Yeah, the source explicitly warns that under this transit, we might see people literally losing their heads, acting irrationally, or being completely incapacitated by what comes up.
And that is exactly what unfolds inside the Earth. The chamber doors seal shut. Alarms sound.
Panic.
Complete panic. Leora's excavation team completely falls apart. Strong workers literally drop to their knees, unable to speak.
One man starts shouting incoherently, swinging at the air, because the suppressed fear, the ancestral grief, and his own buried wounds are suddenly unearthed all at once.
The chamber isn't attacking them physically. It is forcing them to experience a profound emotional starvation they've been ignoring for decades.
Now, regarding this algal energy, we should note that the astrology source explicitly states a very specific dynamic here.
Yes, it does.
It notes that this transit can energize feminine strength when faced with patriarchal oppression and the ability to rise above victimization. We are just reporting what the sources highlight here, but it's a key theme.
Absolutely. And the sci-fi story mirrors that concept precisely as the core thematic text of Leora's vision.
How does it show up in the story?
As the men around her are losing their minds, Leora sees faces emerging from the darkness of the machine's memory. Specifically, she sees visions of women throughout history standing against councils of men who had routinely dismissed them.
Right.
She sees generations of caretakers who were ignored until the very moment the collapse arrived. They were forced to be silent by systems that rewarded domination and extraction over stewardship.
It culminates in one specific woman in the vision staring directly at Leora. She is bruised, she is exhausted, but she's entirely unbroken.
And the message that settles into Leora's bones in that moment is a single phrase. Endurance is not surrender.
Endurance is not surrender. That's powerful.
It really is.
But practically speaking, in the middle of this literal and psychological earthquake, with her team losing their minds around her, how does Leora actually survive this without losing her own head? I mean, the Algol transit is threatening to tear her apart, too.
She survives by forcing her nervous system back into that Taurus energy.
Ah.
She quite literally touches grass or, well, in this subterranean context, stone.
Right.
In the midst of the sensory overload and her own crushing desire to just curl up and give in, she drops to her knees and flattens her palms against the floor of the chamber.
She focuses entirely on the stone, the physical pressure, the undeniable reality of gravity.
Yes, the text notes her revelation, which is, no revelation mattered unless it could survive contact with soil.
What a phenomenal grounding mechanism. By forcing her brain to process the physical reality of the floor, she stops her mind from spiraling into 1,000 hypothetical future disasters.
She breathes deliberately, she stands up, and she cuts straight through the mass panic.
She tells her team, panic builds nothing, fear plants nothing. We leave here one decision at a time.
She neutralizes the overwhelming, paralyzing fear of the macro collapse by shrinking her focus down to the absolute smallest, most immediate micro-truth.
It's a total masterclass in crisis management. At one point, a terrified worker asks her, "What if we fail?"
And her response shifts the entire paradigm. She says, then we fail slowly enough to learn.
Fail slowly enough to learn. I love that. It removes the demand for perfection and replaces it with the demand for presence.
Exactly. And eventually the chamber doors open. They make it back to the surface.
But Astorvale has changed, hasn't it?
It has. There is this strange, almost electric storm brewing outside. Lightning that looks like veins of silver in the sky.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this storm is the manifestation of Leora finally understanding that Uranus-Sedna conjunction.
Yes. The energy of sudden liberation and breaking free.
But coming out of the Earth, her entire definition of freedom has been transformed.
Right, because normally when we think of freedom or rebellion, we think of escaping, breaking our
Sure.
chains, quitting the job, running away from all constraints and responsibilities.
Just burning it all down.
Exactly. But Leora realizes that true freedom isn't escape. It isn't rebellion just for the fleeting high of breaking something.
True freedom actually requires roots. You cannot be free if the ground beneath you is washing away. Freedom is having a foundation strong enough to survive the storm of upheaval.
So she marches into the ruling council that evening, and she makes her final move.
What does she do?
She leaves all of the consortium's highly lucrative, incredibly tempting offers completely unopened on the table.
Wow.
She officially refuses to sell a single seed. Selling them, she argues, would just create a cycle of dependence and doom both worlds.
But she doesn't just turn her back on the starving worlds, right?
No, she doesn't. Instead, she dictates that Astorvale will teach the Imperium restoration. They will send experts to teach soil renewal, patience, and sustainable growth.
She completely rejects the Imperium's false urgency and forces them onto Astorvale's timeline.
Naturally, the Council is outraged. They are terrified of the Imperium's military, and they predict total ruin and invasion.
But Leora delivers the ultimate takeaway from this entire narrative, which captures the essence of the astrological alignments we've discussed perfectly.
What does she tell him?
She tells them every civilization believes collapse belongs to someone else until the ground beneath them disappears.
Her ultimate choice is to reject the grand, panic gestures and to begin again with smaller choices. Slower ones. Truer ones.
So, what does this all mean? How does a sci-fi story about galactic agriculture and an astrological reading about unseen planets actually help you?
It's all connected.
It is. Whether you look at this through the lens of the Taurus grounding energy or the incredible world building of Astorvale, the core lesson is identical.
Real, lasting progress in your life isn't about rushing to put out fires.
No. It is not about sacrificing your long-term well-being just to get a hit of short-term relief from whatever Imperium in your life is demanding your energy right now.
It is about deliberately slowing down.
It is about grounding yourself in reality when the pressure mounts. And most importantly, it is about having the courage to finally face those psychological underground chambers.
The suppressed fears.
Yes. The exhaustion, the ancient shame that you've been avoiding through constant frantic motion.
Which raises an important question, and it's a final thought I want to leave you to mull over today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've spent a lot of time analyzing human memory and the emotional starvation we suppress when we rush through our lives. But remember, in the story, it was the planet itself that had hidden the memory.
Right.
The ancient machine was buried in the physical earth, recording the history of impatience. It asks us to consider our own spaces.
Oh, that's interesting.
How is your own physical environment quietly storing the memories of your past impatience? Your home, your workspace, the clutter on your desk, the very objects around you, they hold the physical imprint of how you choose to live. What would happen if you finally stopped rushing, stood perfectly still, and actually listened to what those physical spaces are trying to tell you about what you truly need?
That is a deeply confronting thought. I mean, if our rooms could talk about how often we've panicked in them, I'm not sure we'd like what they have to say.
Probably not.
But it's a necessary reflection. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Today, your mission is simple. Try to step outside. Literally feel the ground beneath your feet, just for a moment.
Just slow down.
Remember that healing, true healing, is never an emergency response. It is the slow, quiet, unglamorous work of cells rebuilding. Focus on making small, slow choices today. They are the only ones strong enough to endure.